Are we ready? We're live in the room. Are we live online too? All right, good to go. All right. Hey, well, good morning, everybody. I'm Jason. I'm the pastor here at Life Church. Really glad to have you with us this morning. Great to have you here today. For those of you joining online, for those who are here in the room with us, we're excited about a good day together. We are starting a new teaching series today called Breathe, Learning to Care for the Soul, which is an important thing to think about. So hopefully over the next couple of weeks you'll enjoy some thoughts around that. Today we're getting started on that. Before we go further today, I did want to let you know, sort of, because this is the news and the culture, and even for us as a church, we are now stepping into a phase in accordance with what the CDC has promoted, what they're advising, that those who are fully vaccinated can pretty much go anywhere in the world without their masks. We're following along with that, so fully vaccinated people, we just invite you to do what you're comfortable with, but we are no longer requiring masks, and we know that some people will still be wearing masks for a lot of different reasons, and that's fine too. To each their own on this journey. No judgment from us, so if you're comfortable still, or it still sort of is helpful to you in one way or another, or you're choosing to wear the mask, that's fine. But for those, especially those that are fully vaccinated, it's time we can drop those, and some of us are dancing a little jig about that. And so we're glad that you're here today. As always, too, I want to encourage you to fill out our digital connection card, and that's in our Life Church app. When you can find our app in any app store, just search Life Church Lancaster, and that digital connection card is right on the home screen of the app. Just takes a second, lets us know you're here, lets us know you're engaging with us, especially those of you watching online. We love to know who's out there with us, and so take a moment to fill that out, and we hope you have a great morning with us. The band's got some really good songs to play for us, so I'm going to turn it over to them, and anyway, so take it away.
Thank you, Jason. What a beautiful day it is to be here together, worship with us, or be here and experience anything that you need to experience today. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, Lord. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you. Keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, never stop, never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, never stop working. You never stop, never stop. You are way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. 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 That is who you are, Lord. Who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are. You are way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. That is who you are. You are the light in the darkness. You are the miracle worker, the promise keeper. My God, that is who you are. The kingdom is yours. Blessed are the ones who are mourning. Blessed are those who walk in kindness. Blessed are those who suffer violence. Though they fall, they'll never know defeat. The kingdom is yours. Blessed are the ones who do not pay all the broken pieces of their heart. Blessed are the tears of all the weary, pouring like a sky of fallen stars. Blessed are the wounded ones in war, brave enough to show the Lord their scars. Blessed are the hurts that are not hidden, open to the healing touch of God. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Hope is in the Lord. Keep your eyes on Him. Blessed are the ones who walk in kind, even in the face of great abuse. Blessed are the deeds that go unnoticed, serving with unguarded gratitude. Blessed are the ones who fight for justice, longing for the coming day of peace. Blessed is the soul that searches for righteousness, welcoming the lost, the last, the least. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Hope is in the Lord. Keep your eyes on Him. Oh, suffer violence and have the strength to love their enemies. Blessed is the faith of those who persevere. Though they fall, they'll never know defeat. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Hope is in the Lord. Keep your eyes on Him. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Hope is in the Lord. Keep your eyes on Him. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Hope is in the Lord. Keep your eyes on Him. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. No matter where you are, He is here. Be with us. Give us the strength to hold on. Help us be brave. Give us your strength to fight justice. You are here. We reach for you. Amen.
Good morning. Thank you. Welcome to Life Church this morning. So good to see those of you who are here in person, and welcome to those of you who are joining us online. Life Church exists to lead people to Jesus for life. So whether church is a constant in your life, and it is where you go to find your grounding and where you are most centered, or if it's something that you're tentative about and just not sure about, it is our hope that you can come here and find a safe space to take whatever next steps you find that will be best and suiting for you, and that together we can learn from each other, support each other, and encourage each other on our spiritual journeys and our connection with God and with one another. So welcome. If you could take just a moment to open up our Life Church app and fill out our connection card, we would really appreciate it, especially through this season where so many of you are joining us online. We love to hear from you, hear that you're joining us, but also that's a great place to let us know if there's a way we can support you, to give us feedback maybe about how things are happening and how you are receiving the experience online, or anything really. We just want to be in community with you and hear from you and have conversation with you. So connection card is a great place to start that conversation. Okay, I have a few fun things as we are continuing to ease back into life at a more normal kind of experience. We are excited to be getting together a little bit more, and I have a couple things upcoming here soon in June. The first is our youth group summer kickoff, which is going to be Saturday, June 12th from 6:30 to 10 right out here on our lawn, okay? We're going to have all kinds of games. There's going to be food. They're going to do glow-in-the-dark stuff once it gets dark. They're going to have a fire pit. They're going to put some big screens up and play Wii together. So any students going into 6th grade all the way through 12th grade, you are invited to join us on Saturday, Saturday, June 12th from 6:30 to 10, and your friends are welcome. So details can all be found on our website and on our app, okay? So if you have any questions, connection card or website and app. Okay, the second thing is there's a church-wide hike. We had our first one yesterday. It was super fun. We had a great time. Met some of you for the very first time in person. Saw some of you that we haven't seen since pre-COVID time. It was super fun. So if you are able and interested in coming, June 26th is our next hike, and you can find the info for that on our app as well. Through this season, there's constantly things being adjusted, and things are not running, they're not the same every week. So I want to keep directing everybody to our app. You can connect to us there. You can find details about any events happening there. The family ministries we're currently still doing every other week for our kids, and we're primarily outdoors. Any details about that, or if you're wondering, is this the week they have kids stuff, or is it next week, you can find all of that in our app. So go ahead and download that in the App Store. It's free. And the last thing I have is I just want to thank you for being such a generous community. You continue to give financially to what we do here at Life Church, and I say it every time I have the opportunity, but we couldn't do it without you. And you have been so supportive to one another through this season and to our church and to our staff team. So we're super, super thankful for the financial gifts that you continue to give us. And if you'd like to give today, you can text any amount to 84321, and it's pretty easy. It'll give you the prompts that you can follow. So welcome. Take a deep breath, and we hope that you have a wonderful morning here with us.
The Lord took hold of me, and I was carried away by the Spirit of the Lord to a valley filled with bones. He led me all around among the bones that covered the valley floor. They were scattered everywhere across the ground and were completely dried out. Then he asked me, "Son of man, can these bones become living people again?" "O sovereign Lord," I replied, "you alone know the answer to that." Then he said to me, "Speak a prophetic message to these bones and say, 'Dry bones, listen to the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Look, I am going to put breath into you and make you live again. I will put flesh and muscles on you and cover you with skin. I will put breath into you, and you will come to life. Then you will know that I am the Lord." So I spoke this message, just as he told me. Suddenly, as I spoke, there was a rattling noise all across the valley. The bones of each body came together and attached themselves as complete skeletons. And as I watched, muscles and flesh formed over the bones. The skin formed to cover their bodies, but they still had no breath in them. Then he said to me, "Speak a prophetic message to the winds, Son of man. Speak a prophetic message and say, 'This is what the sovereign Lord says. Come, O breath from the four winds. Breathe into these dead bodies so they may live again.' So I spoke the message as he commanded me, and breath came into their bodies. They all came to life and stood up on their feet, a great army. Then he said to me, 'Son of man, these bones represent the people of Israel. They are saying, we have become old, dry bones. All hope is gone. Our nation is finished. Therefore prophesy to them and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. O my people, I will open your graves of exile and cause you to rise again. Then I will bring you back to the land of Israel. When this happens, O my people, you will know that I am the Lord. I will put my spirit in you, and you will live again, and return home to your own land. Then you will know that I, the Lord, have spoken, and I have done what I said. Yes, the Lord has spoken."
Prophecy of the Valley of Dry Bones. Is that where that video's text comes from? It's this ancient prophecy of a story of God speaking, breathing life into a human situation, a situation of devastation, breathing life into this situation and bringing people back to life, bringing a nation back to life, bringing all things back to life. The breath of God. So we're going to think the next few weeks about breathe, about learning to care for the soul. It's a really important topic to think through for a lot of different reasons. And so the next few weeks, today we're going to kind of do a little bit of an introduction. Next week, I want to talk to you about the soul and silence. And then I want to talk about the soul and nature. Surprise, surprise for some of you who know me. And then I want to finish this series thinking about the soul and technology, right? We're going to think about technology at the end and its effect on our souls. But today we're starting with a little bit of kind of an overview, a start to this conversation. Anytime you engage in a conversation where you're talking about soul and caring for the soul, this is a big, big, big conversation. We are playing around in the kiddie pool. I am, even at this point in my own spiritual journey, I'm still learning so much. I'm still growing so much, kind of like I said, playing around in the kiddie pool in these ideas. And so hopefully some of the things I have to share are helpful to you. Maybe some of you are much further down the road than I am. But in his book, kind of a classic book, Renewing Your Spiritual Passion, the theologian and pastor Gordon MacDonald makes this comment that I want to share with you today. He says this: I believe we are headed toward an epidemic of fatigue and weariness that has never been seen before. Sort of like that valley of dry bones that we just saw in the video. He says, Christians have always worked hard. They've always known honest tiredness, the result of work and servanthood, but something different is happening today. He goes on to say, the believing community has never been so busy, never has so many voices to listen to, never so many choices to make, never so many ways to respond. That I believe explains why we are facing the potential of a wholesale exhaustion of spirit. And then he says, to ignore that unique phenomenon is to invite spiritual disaster. A wholesale exhaustion of spirit. I don't, maybe that phrase resonates with you. I'm not sure. As we're thinking about this, maybe you feel that sense of a wholesale exhaustion of spirit. And in many ways, you could say that our spiritual lives are in a sort of crisis in this modern culture. But what is interesting is when this was written. As I mentioned, this was a classic work. This is a book that was originally written in 1986. And this is his summarization of the culture and sort of the spiritual moment in 1986. That's back in the 1900s, for those of you who weren't sure. Right? Long time ago. That's before email, right? Can anyone even remember life before email? Before the internet existed in 1986, before cell phones existed. We didn't even have car phones in 86, did we? Right? Car phones came along like they were like a shoebox in your car with this massive thing. Those were like in the late 80s, early 90s. I don't know, am I wrong on this? Anyway, there was no social media in 1986. So what would Mr. MacDonald say, Mr. Gordon, Professor Gordon MacDonald say now today, right? Something is going on, a wholesale exhaustion of spirit. Never so many choices, never so many options, never so many decisions, never so many voices to listen to. My goodness, from 1986, we can multiply that 1,000 times. So in this series, part of what I want us to encourage to do and learn to do in this journey, learn to do in this life is to breathe, right? Just breathe. Caught that. Anyway, breathe. Just breathe. And so one of the things we have to realize on this journey of life is to recognize that we as humans are more than simply flesh and bones, right? We're not just this tangible reality that exists, right? You have a body, you have face, you have legs, you have arm hair, you have organs inside, you have muscles and blood, but you are more than those things. We are each more than those things, right? We have body and spirit, and some would say we have body, spirit, and soul, and that's a conversation that we won't explore, dichotomy versus trichotomy, and some of you are like, what? I know, just don't worry about it. Anyway, soul or spirit has been the source of speculation for millennia, right? Philosophers, theologians, religions have wrestled with this intangible aspect of who we are as human beings, right? It was in the Iliad and the Odyssey in the 6th century BC that Homer speaks of the soul as something that gives life to the body. The soul is like the source of life to the body. Plato saw that the soul, he believed that the soul actually possessed knowledge before it's being embedded into a human being. And so therefore the body actually limited the soul's true potential. The Jewish philosopher of the 1st century, Philo, thought that the body was actually, he said it was a tomb for the soul. Right? The soul was the good thing, that was the wonderful part, and the body was this tomb. It was sort of like had this deadening effect to the soul. This relationship between the body and the soul, they've been debated for millennia. And all religious traditions recognize that there's something more than flesh and bones about us, that we're also soul, we're also spirit, inner light. There's something more going on. And so the Jewish people have their own sort of way they pull this together, their own sort of story behind this, their own sort of understanding. And we saw some of that in this prophecy that was given a minute ago. But right from the beginning of the Jewish scriptures, or what we call the Old Testament, right, in the book of Genesis, this is what is said about the human and the soul. It says, Genesis chapter 2, verse 7 says this, "Then the Lord God formed the man out of the dust of the ground. And he breathed the breath of life into the man's nostrils, and the man became a living person." He breathed the breath of life, and he became a living person. Breathe. And it was understood, the soul was understood as something, as a gift from the Creator, something as a gift from God, from the divine. And we could wrestle and we could have a whole other conversation and an argument about, is this literal or is this metaphorical? Did God actually take dirt and make clay and breathe, or was this more of a metaphorical understanding? And you may, at the end of the day, you can be on either side of that, and that is fine. But one thing I would say is that, the ancients, those who pulled these texts together and told these stories, this was a pre-scientific age. They didn't think in scientific categories like we do today, and most of what they were concerned about is sort of these functional origins of of how humanity came about and how God was involved in that process. So I'm not persuaded to think that what the author of Genesis is doing is making a scientific statement about our physical origins, but more so about this mystery that we all see and experience. When you look into someone else's eyes and you stare closely and you say, wow, something more is happening here. This is not just flesh and blood. It's mystery. Now, Jesus often referenced this aspect of who we are as people, right? He referenced this soul part of us, this soul-spirit dynamic. And so there's a lot of places we could go to find some insights from Jesus on this, but one of the ones that stood out to me as I was thinking about this is found in Mark chapter 8, and this is what Jesus says as he's in this conversation with a group of people. He says, "And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul?" Right? This is one of the most popular things Jesus has said. He says, "Is anything worth more than your soul?" It's the breath of God within us, the life, right? It's priceless. Nothing is worth more, Jesus is saying. What would you trade for your soul, for your very soul? What would you trade, right? And there's all kinds of cultural jokes and stories about people trading something. The devil went down to Georgia, if you remember that song, right? Trading his soul for the skill of a musician or for fame. But what would you give for your soul, Jesus challenges us to think, without losing everything else in the process? And what's interesting is that this reality, this part of us, it's unique to us, right? You've never really met the same person twice, right? We are all created in the image of God, and yet extraordinarily unique and individual. It's not a generic gift that God gives to us. We're all endowed with this by God with this unique identity. a unique identity that lives within us. I mean, you could take two babies born from the same parents, put them in the same context, give them the same opportunities, give them the same experiences in life, the same parenting philosophies, the same schools, the same education, same resources, same everything, and yet those two souls will grow into totally different human beings. Right? Because we're all unique in that sense. This soul gift that we've been given is a unique gift from God to each and every one of us. And Parker Palmer speaks about this dynamic of the unique aspects of our soul when he was observing his granddaughter. He was in his older years, and he has a granddaughter, and he's watching her from the very beginnings as a small child, realizing she's already got like certain aspects about it, bent in a certain way. And this is what he observes. He says, she did not show up as raw material to be shaped in whatever image the world might want her to take. She arrived with her own gifted form, with the shape of her own sacred soul. Then he goes on to say this. He says, biblical faith calls it the image of God in which we are all created. Thomas Merton calls it true self. Quakers call it the inner light, or that of God in every person. The humanist traditions call it identity and integrity. And then he says, no matter what you call it, it is a pearl of great price. Or as Jesus says, what would you trade for your soul? It's priceless. Its value is beyond speculation. It's a piece of the divine within us. It's the breath of God. And it also uniquely forms who we are. So to be cared for and to be tended, to be developed, we have to listen to the soul, pay attention to the soul. And what I want to say to us in this series is sometimes that just means we need to breathe. We need to take moments to just stop and breathe. Now, so you're in church today. Kudos. Way to go. Good job. Nice to see you here today. And church and religion is sort of what, this is sort of the business that we're in, right? Soul business, spirit business. Religions, that's kind of what we're about, right? We're into the care of the soul, the development of the soul. Has your soul been saved? You might have been asked that question at some point on the journey. This is the business that we're supposed to be in religion and spirituality, helping our souls connect to the God who made us and helping us know who we are in this world and what we're created to do and be. But too often, what happens in religious context is that we focus on the external realities of our religious engagement, and we don't focus as much on the internal realities of that engagement. Instead of developing our internal soul in our religious spiritual practice, what we say is, well, stop saying those naughty words, right? We say, well, don't watch, bad shows on Netflix. We begin to focus on some externals, these do's and don'ts, the rules and the regulations, right? Instead of helping people listen to the soul, we say, listen to the voice of their soul. We say things like, well, you need to pray. So pray like this, and here's the right way to pray, and here's the wrong way to pray, or you need to be more content. So here's 6 steps to be content. So be content, and you need to be more passionate about the gospel and telling people about Jesus, and so go do that, and be less angry, and while you're at it, stop being so selfish, and we have a lot of like these exhortations and these rules and regulations, and don't go to the movie theater, and don't do this, and don't do that, and make sure you do this, and make sure you do that. And these externals are sometimes fine, sometimes they're kind of misguided, but too often they're not engaging the soul, the inner part of us. They're simply external behavioral modification mechanisms. And a lot of times in these ways, they place a burden on the soul, rather than allowing the life and breath of God to grow and flourish within us. They throw a blanket over it. Now, I know you're kind of pointing fingers at somebody in your mind right now because those people over there, they were like this. They focus on the externals, not on the internals. And what I want to say to us today, part of this is important for us to think about, is this is not a conservative or a liberal problem. It's both. It's the conservatives and the liberals in Christianity, in the spiritual life, all struggle with this external versus internal dynamic. Because conservatives will say, well, you need to follow certain rules, right? And those rules are pray more, or read your Bible every day, or share the gospel with someone once a week. And progressives will say, recycle, become a social justice advocate, don't believe outdated doctrines, right? And it's still this sort of focus on some external realities, external pieces of who we are. Don't do this, here's the rules, follow them. It's just different sets of rules to the right or to the left, and both sides will miss the internal soul transformation that God actually wants to take us on. Over and over again, Jesus criticized the Pharisees in his culture for their love of the externals. And they had a complete oversight of the internals of their spiritual situation. And one thing that's kind of interesting, if you read the stories of Jesus in the Gospels, you find out he had a few people groups that he was kind of always rubbing against in a negative sort of way. The Pharisees, we know them. The Sadducees, that's right. Where are you at, Dwayne? Where is he? Oh, he's all the way out in the lobby. Anyway, so we have the Pharisees, we have the Sadducees, you have the scribes, the lawyers or the teachers of the law. These are all these different religious teams that you could be on in his culture. And what's interesting, they weren't all conservatives. Some of them actually were more liberal in their culture, and some of them were more conservative, some of them more progressive, some of them more traditional. And Jesus was constantly pushing against these guys because of their focus on the externals. Listen to what he says in Matthew 23. He says, "What sorrow awaits you teachers of religious law and you Pharisees?" Right? He's grouping a lot of different people in the religious establishment together there, the liberals and the progressives and the conservatives. He says, "Hypocrites, you're so careful to clean the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside you're filthy, full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisees. First, wash the inside of the cup and the dish, and then the outside will become clean too." Which is a really powerful thing to say. We are often like, I need to clean up the externals, and then maybe my inside will be in better shape. And Jesus says, start with the inside. Deal with the internal dynamics, and the outside, the external dynamics, will take care of themselves. Experience this inner transformation first. Jesus today might be saying to us, you can't write a check to a church or to a nonprofit, but ignore the pride in your heart. You can't volunteer and serve in ministry and give up so much in that regard, but yet ignore your greed. You can't go through the motions of prayer while still holding on to bitterness and resentment in your heart against a fellow traveler. Over and over again, Jesus directs our attention to the development and the growth of the internal. What's happening inside? What's going on in our souls? And this interior part of who we are is this gift from God, this true self. What's interesting is that it needs to be cultivated. It needs some attention. It needs to be heard, to be listened to be engaged with. So this was something that the British intellectual Christian from a generation ago, which you might be familiar with, C.S. Lewis, author of the Chronicles of Narnia, he thought a lot about this dynamic, this aspect of who we are sort of on the inside and who we are becoming, the immortal soul. And in his book called The Weight of Glory, he makes this comment. It's an interesting comment. He says, "It's a serious thing to live in a society of possible gods and goddesses. To remember that the dullest, most uninteresting person you can talk to may one day be a creature which, if you saw it now, you would be strongly tempted to worship, or else a horror and a corruption such as you now meet, if at all, only in your nightmares." Whoever you meet on the street, he's saying, like, eventually, they're on a progression. Like in this care of the soul, this transformation of the soul, and transforming into that interior part, transforming into something beautiful, wonderful, something you might be tempted to worship if you fully saw it in all its glory, or something that might be much less beautiful. He says this, he says, "All day long we are in some degree helping each other to one or the other of these destinations. There are no ordinary people. You've never talked with a mere mortal," he says. Now, that's food for thought. I'm thinking about that. You might hear that phrase or that quote, and you're like, what's he getting at here? And do I embrace that? I'm not sure. And that's some food for thinking. But part of what I love about this idea is this set, what he's laying out here is this, like, we are not mere mortals. Like, you've never engaged with the mere mortal. Who we are in development. And God is working to breathe into us, to bring life to our souls and to bring us to this wonderful, wonderful place. But there's a co-working that we do. There's an engagement. There's a synergy. Like, we join him in that journey. Right? And we can choose to refuse that. We can choose to push against that. We can choose to harbor bitterness in our heart and our lives or hatred and let that affect our souls in negative ways and begin to deform us over time. Or we can choose to release the hatred, to let go of the bitterness, to begin to do the internal soul work. If you're curious more about C.S. Lewis and his thoughts on that, this is part of the premise behind his book, The Great Divorce, which is kind of the way he thinks about heaven and hell and eternity. He puts forth an idea in there. It's interesting. So that's the extra credit. You can read that later if you would like to explore those ideas. But this inner work is very, very necessary. And it's not just about outer adherence to religious rules and regulations, right? It's this inner transformational thing, something internal, this work that has to be done in our soul's growth and development. Well, what's interesting is that often the catalyst for true, deep soul transformation is often pain. Right? I hate to break it to you. But so too often, it's the difficulties in life, the challenges that we face, that ultimately push us a little deeper. When we hit rock bottom for one reason or another, when we have a public failure, a public humiliation of one sort or another, or when you work so hard on something that just doesn't come together, or maybe you're dealing with some sort of personal struggle, a sickness, an illness, it's pains and difficulties like that that often are the very catalyst that forces us to go a little deeper internally and develop our souls. At least it gives us the opportunity to do that in a way that we just never do when we just hit the home run and we're circling the bases. Woo-hoo-hoo, you know what I'm saying? Like we're just celebrating in those moments, and that's a wonderful moment, and if that describes your life right now, I'm so glad for you. Like, maybe we can hang out and some of that can rub off onto me in one way or another. That would be great. But too often, it's the hardships and the pains and the failures of life that give us the opportunity to have a soul transformation that's unlike, that can't happen in any other way. And it's not uncommon for someone to walk through deep soul transformation and kind of come out the other side and be a changed person. And they now see the world differently. They see their faith differently. They're walking into this in sort of new territory. And then that person gets rejected by the religious authorities because the religious authorities are so focused on the externals. And now that person isn't really following the externals like they thought. There was an internal soul transformation that just seems to outshine a lot of those externals, rules and regulations that have been followed. That's a bit of what happened to Jesus, right? He had a significant soul transformation, paradigm shift. The religious authorities were like, that doesn't fit here. Let's get rid of you. And I don't want to overstep my bounds here and speak out of turn or speak for a group that I am not directly a part of, but I think it's something that I have seen with the LGBTQ community, especially those who grow up in Christian circles, who grow up in a context where their sexual identity is not welcomed or embraced, and so that often has hurled them into significant pain, significant difficulties, significant struggles. And often I have seen with many of the LGBT people that I've interacted with a transformed soul that's beautiful. You can tell they've walked through the valley, they've walked through difficulty, and they've come out the other side with a sense of a centeredness, of identity, of soulness. And then they interact with some of the religious gatekeepers who continue to focus on the externals, some who often have not even experienced much inner transformation. And they get written off, they get disregarded, they get accused of things, ostracized, pushed out of communities. And yet, because of that journey of difficulty that they've walked through, there's a soul transformation that's happened that is there to bless the entire community, and the entire community can learn from if we just pay attention. So Jesus invites us to wash the inside of the cup, and the outside will take care of itself. Be internally transformed, and the exterior will work itself out. Now, and I believe, along with Thomas Merton, Parker Palmer, who I referenced earlier, that our souls long for wholeness. Now, this is a whole other sub-sermon we could go into about are our hearts just completely wicked and awful and terrible, and we would never ever do anything good unless God made us do it? Or is there some level of is there, if someone believes in original sin, can we also believe in original goodness? Because Genesis says, very first thing it says about humans is that they are good. God looked upon them and said they are good. It's a couple chapters later when it says, well, they sinned and screwed up. So there's a big debate about, what, if left to ourselves, what do we do? Do we just become as awful of humans as possible? Or are we capable to engage in a process with God of growth and transformation? And with Merton and Palmer, I lean towards the side that says I think our souls do long for that wholeness. We're created in the image of God. That compulsion is there, right? So if our souls lean in this direction, and if we listen closely, if we're willing to stop and breathe, they'll lead us into a life of transformation and freedom. It's the breath of God within us. And it will guide us home if we're willing to listen to the calling. So I want to ask you something as I kind of wrap up today. How is your soul? It's a question we don't often ask ourselves. Greeting each other in the lobby, after church. Hey, good to see you today. How's your soul? Right? You should start doing that, right? But this is a good question to ask yourself every now and again, to find a moment in some quiet where you can say, how is my soul actually doing today? Is it anxious? Tired? Worried? Wounded? Grieving? Hungry? Divided? Suppressed? Repressed? And a follow-up question is, are you listening to that soul, that piece of you inside of you? And what might it be saying to you? What might your soul have to say to you if you just were willing to stop and listen for a second? Is it crying out for healing? Is it asking you to let go of the bitterness? Is it inviting you to go deeper? Or is it trying to show you a difficult truth that you've been suppressing? Is it telling you to slow down and pay attention? What would it say if we were just listening? So I want us to think this week, as you kind of go through your week, the question I want you to wrestle with this week, this is your homework, part of your homework, it's just this: how is my soul and what is it saying? What is it saying to me? How's my soul and what is it saying to me? We don't stop enough in our culture to ask these questions and to think deeply about this, right? We're running 100 miles an hour. There's a wholesale exhaustion of spirit within our culture. There's a lot of reasons for it. We're going to talk a little bit about some of that in the weeks to come, but I want us to just start in a simple place of asking ourselves, how is my soul and what is it saying to me? And so the action, that's the question to ask yourself, but I want to encourage you, and next week we're going to talk about silence. So this is a little bit of a precursor to get us into that, a homework in advance. I don't know what, I'm searching for the right word, but anyway, it's your assignment this week to prepare you for next week, and that's this: take 5 minutes of silence for 5 days. Right? We're starting easy. Find 5 minutes in your day where you can be still and quiet. Set your timer if you need to. You can just, if you have Siri on your phone, you can just say, if I say it, my phone's going to go, it's going to respond. But you say, hey, fill in the blank, turn on a timer, right? That's all it takes. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Find a place that's quiet. Maybe it's in your car because the house is too chaotic. Maybe you found a tree in a park across the street, or maybe it's outside your office at a picnic table, or maybe it's in your bed maybe not before you fall asleep, because you'll probably just fall asleep. But so anyway, take 5 minutes, 5 times this week, to just be silent and listen and wrestle with this question: how is my soul and what is it saying to me? Now the thing about the soul, and Parker Palmer says this, He says, it's kind of like a wild animal. If you want to engage with your soul, it's a little bit like a wild animal. You can't go like stomping through the forest and be like, hey deer, hey bear, where are you? Hey rabbit, hey fox. Like they run, right? They're very full of life, right? They're full of vitality, a wild animal is, and yet they're super skittish, and they will run at the slightest moment of danger. And so when you engage with the soul, you've got to come quietly, you've got to come carefully, and just sit and wait like you would sit by a tree and wait for the squirrel or the fox or whatever to run by. And it doesn't always happen every single time, right? This is not microwave, take a pill, and everything's fine. This is like sit and wait. Right? So maybe you want to go 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever. We'll start with 5, right? 5 minutes, 5 times to sit and wait for your soul to show up. Asking this question, how's my soul and what is it saying to me? Because I believe God has breathed into you and into me his breath of life. And Jesus says, your soul is of infinite value. So breathe. Just breathe. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you so much for these few moments to think about these things. We know that we're learning that the soul is just such a powerful part of who we are, and yet it's really hard to even pin down soul, spirit, inner light, that of God in each of us. Like what exactly is this? And that's part of the beauty, that we can't just put it in a test tube and measure it, that it's something that's beyond us even. And then we have to sit and wait and lean into that experience. And so I pray this morning that each of us here would in some way this week maybe be courageous enough to ask some of these questions of our soul. How are you doing? What do you have to say to me? And might we be listening, and might your spirit mingle with our spirit and speak to us the truths that you want us to know and hear and experience. Help us lean into that true reality of who we are and the gift that you've given us in this breath of life. Might you breathe, just like the valley of dry bones, might you breathe into us and bring to life that which is parched, that which is dead, that which has rotted, that which we thought was too far gone. Might you breathe your life into it and bring it back to life again. It's in Jesus we pray. Amen.
Now that the darkness fades into new beginning, we lift our eyes to a hope beyond. If you feel comfortable, stand up. And if you also feel comfortable, there'll be a chance where you can do some clapping. So, all right, let's do this. Now the darkness fades into new beginnings as we lift our eyes to a hope beyond. All creation waits with an expectation to declare the reign of the Lord our God. We will not be moved when the earth gives way, for the risen one has overcome. And for every fear, there's an empty grave, for the risen one has overcome. Put your hands together if you're feeling it. We serve a God who is risen here with us today. Now the silence breaks in the name of Jesus, as the heavens cry, let the earth respond. All creation shouts with the voice of triumph to declare the reign of the Lord our God. We will not be moved when the earth gives way, for the risen one is overcome. And for every fear, there's an empty grave, for the risen one is overcome. forever. Strongholds now surrender for the Lord. Our God is overcome. Who can be against us? Jesus, our defender. He is Lord, and He is overcome. He shall reign forever. Strongholds now surrender for the Lord. Our God is overcome. He shall reign forever. Jesus, our defender. He is Lord, and He is overcome. He shall reign forever. Strongholds now surrender for the Lord. Our God is overcome. Who can be against us? Jesus, our defender. He is Lord, and He has overcome. We will not be moved when the earth gives way, for the risen one has overcome. And for every fear, there's an empty grave, for the risen one is overcome. We will not be moved when the earth gives way, for the risen one is overcome. And for every fear, there's an empty grave, for the risen one is overcome.
Man, sounding good. Hey, thank you so much for being here today. I hope you had an encouraging experience with us this morning. If you have any questions about anything, I'll be hanging out outside if you want to ask me some questions about something I said, or if I offended you in some way, I would like to make that right out there. And so, so feel free to interact and hang out. It would be great to kind of move outdoors. That'd be fantastic. And remember the connection card and the digital connection card. If you haven't filled that out, that would be super helpful to us. And next week, we'll be in part 2 of this series talking about the soul in silence. But also, I think our kids programming will be happening next week. Is that right? Yep. So the kids programming. So for those who have some kids and want them to engage, they'll be outside doing some fun stuff next week. So thanks for being here. I hope you have yourselves a great week this week. And until we see you again next time, Godspeed.